California has some of the highest energy standards, highest energy requirements in the country. And so we're going to, in this video, talk about lighting and the California energy standards. Those requirements are located in our California Building Code, Title 24, Part 6. The current standard is 2019, but 2022 is coming up soon. All right. And all residential buildings in our state must meet a set of mandatory requirements. This includes new construction, alterations, and additions. The requirements fall into two categories: high efficacy lighting and lighting controls. And we'll talk about both those categories. Most of the information and the illustrations in this video and in this presentation are coming from the 2019 Residential Lighting Guide provided to you in your module. So I expect you to go take a look at that, please. So our first category of requirements was high efficacy lighting. Now, efficacy is a new vocabulary word to most of you. It is specific for efficiency of lighting, and it's defined as the amount of light that is being provided, all right, in lumens, divided by or per the amount of energy that's used. All right, so efficacy, it's a new vocabulary word. Everybody go ahead and pause and say it, efficacy. Now you know. All right, the requirement in California is that all luminaires, all light fixtures, meet JA8 requirements. Now, what is JA8? It is simply the name of the appendix in the code in which this requirement lives. All right, and here in your lighting guide, take a look on the left, there's a whole list of things that are included in this JA8 requirement. But the number one most important one is the initial efficacy of the luminaire or the light fixture. And it's required to be greater than or equal to 80 lumens per watt for LEDs, or greater than or equal to 45 lumens per watt for all other source types. Now I've taken a graph over here, okay, of the different types of lighting and their efficacy. So you can see down here at the bottom is incandescent. Incandescent was invented before 1930, and it has roughly the same efficacy over time. All right, here's halogen. Here is a mercury lamp, this blue line. Let's take a look at fluorescent. Fluorescent was invented, looks like around 1940, and has had some significant improvements over the years. And finally, LEDs. Right here you can see they were invented 1990, 2000, and have had some serious improvements, some very, very important improvements in efficacy over the last 15 years. So if you map out this 45 lumens per watt JA8 requirement, I've drawn it on your graph right here. It's right about this dotted line. And you can see what this mandatory efficacy requirement really means. What it means is no incandescents. Okay, we are not allowed to use incandescent lamps. Fluorescents, right here, the green line, okay, they're above this dotted line, they are allowed. And you can tell that LED is generally going to be your most efficient choice with the highest efficacy. Our second category of mandatory requirements is lighting controls. So remember there was efficacy and controls. So here's the second category. And here is a chart or table from that lighting guide talking about the different types of lighting control requirements and the different spaces in a room. Okay, so here in this class we're concentrating on kitchens and bathrooms, but you can see the requirements for the rest of the house actually don't vary all that much. Let's talk about kitchens first. Do you need manual on and off controls? Yes, required for all luminaires, all spaces. They have to be able to be turned on and off manually, okay, not just automatically. Do you need a sensor or a dimmer? And they're talking about an occupancy sensor. For kitchens, it says based on the lamp type. There's a whole footnote and a whole nother chart. And once you look through all of that requirements, yes, pretty much everything must have either a sensor or a dimmer. All right. For bathrooms, there's a special requirement. Okay. You have to have at least one light in a bathroom that's controlled by a vacancy sensor. All right, and we'll talk more about what a vacancy sensor is in a minute. You need to have your exhaust fans switched separately from your lights. You need to have under cabinet lighting switched separately from ceiling mounted lighting. And there are some additional requirements. All right, so go ahead and read through those, but we've hit the highlights here. Let's talk about switches. In general, you want to separate the switching for under cabinet lighting and for exhaust fans. They have to have their own switch. You need everything to have a manual on and off, and you should not be able to bypass any dimmer or sensors. Right? Let's talk about dimmers. Dimmers are required to provide at least a 65% power reduction. They are also required to provide a full off position where there's no power going to your lamp. They have to have a reduced flicker technology. And this is a tricky part. They're required to have three-way circuits. You have to have an on and off. And when you turn the on, okay, it should restore the dimmer to whatever its last setting was. So if someone comes, for example, and uses a light in a bedroom and turns it to a low dim setting, and then later they turn it off, they go about their business and come back, they turn it on again, it should turn on at the lower setting, all right? So you don't constantly have to be turning it down. Let's talk about vacancy sensors. So we said that pretty much all permanent luminaires need to have either a sensor or a dimmer, all right? And that they're talking about occupancy sensors where you walk into the room and the light turns on, all right? But specifically for bathrooms, you're required to have a vacancy sensor. What's a vacancy sensor? It's one that will automatically turn the light off after someone leaves the room, but you have to manually turn it on. It does not have an automatic on function. Okay, so it's got a manual on, no auto on is allowed. Okay, you have to have a manual on and off. You must be able to turn that off, and the auto off has to happen within 20 minutes. So let's take a look at kitchens in general. On the left, you have some of California's requirements, and on the right, some recommendations for good lighting design here. The requirements for kitchens are high efficacy. Pretty much everything has to be high efficacy. Okay. And then control requirements are under cabinets switched separately, manual control required for all, and dimmer or sensor controls required for all. On the recommendations side, they suggest that you separate the different tasks and the different areas in your kitchen, okay, onto different switches. This is going to add some flexibility and therefore reduce the total energy use. They suggest that your sink task luminaire be switched separately. And also, it's important to note that you might want to provide low glare countertops. Sometimes the veiling reflections on those countertops can really interfere with your task performance. Let's take a look at bathroom requirements and recommendations. And by the way, these are the same for laundry rooms, utility rooms, and garages. All right, so all of them have the same requirements. You must have high efficacy luminaires. It's pretty much everywhere, okay? Again, switch any under cabinet lighting separately. Manual control is required. Exhaust fans should be switched separately for the lighting, from the lighting, excuse me. And the specific requirement for bathrooms, at least one luminaire has to have a vacancy control. Moving over to the recommendations side, remember to choose a damp or a wet rating for your bathroom luminaires. What's the difference? Wet rating should be selected for any luminaire directly over a wet area, such as in a shower or bath enclosure. All right. Damp rating should be selected for everything else in a bathroom. Okay. Um, Watch out for areas where a curtain or door is going to cut off your light. You may need to provide additional lighting in that area. They suggest creating or positioning your luminaires vertically, like bath bars or sconces, to distribute light more evenly, especially in the grooming centers. Okay. You'll need to or you might want to use some surface mounted lights to provide lighting for your storage areas. And finally, watch out for some safety issues having to do with vacancy sensors. If you've got a vacancy sensor providing the ambient light for your bath or shower areas, okay, but there's a curtain or a door, you might want to add an additional sensor in that bath or shower area so that the light doesn't turn off on them. All right, so it can sense that there's someone in there. Finally, this resource, the Residential Lighting Guide, has a fabulous example of lighting in practice and an entire lighting plan for a residence, including the lighting schedule. And I encourage you to take a look at this resource. Thanks, everyone. In this video, we covered lighting and California energy standards with respect to kitchen and bath design.